Hello and welcome to episode 8 of my building through the terrain tutorials in the Battle Games in Middle-earth magazines. This is actually going to be magazine 9. This is because I did magazines 1 and 2 in the first video, so this is episode 8. And this is actually one that I did before. I built this a couple of years back as one of my earliest ever terrain builds, as it happens, because I happened to pick up this magazine on its own and I really liked the terrain, so I went and did it. So I have that to show you. I'm going to make it again so that you can see me build through the full tutorial, and I'm also, as is my habit now, going to attempt to make a more advanced build, making use of some other materials and some other techniques just to show you what else you can achieve. So let's get the camera pointed down on the bench, have a look at this tutorial. I'll show you my original build, which actually got damaged sadly recently in a game because we do use it, so I'm going to mend that as well as part of this, which is an unexpected bonus, and then we'll get cracking on the build. So here we are, modelling workshop, the warning beacon. This PAX battle game features a warning beacon that is used to attract the attention of the good heroes. It's pretty cool, I might actually have to play that game. In this modelling workshop we look at techniques used to create this simple but effective piece of scenery. The warning beacon is an integral part of this PAX battle game and its related battle report, the first part of which is presented in this gaming pack. The Rohirrim use beacons like these to warn of danger and signal for help. The likelihood of needing them grows more each day as the attacks of Saruman's Uruk-hai increase. The model uses familiar techniques and readily available materials, along with a plaster filler and balsa wood that you have used in previous modelling workshops. So what it says is you will need a thick packing card, a ready mixed filler or powdered if you don't have it, black, white, green, flesh and brown acrylic paints. So we're picking up the number and variety of paints that we need. A large paintbrush, scissors, a crafting knife, steel rule and cutting mat, static grass or flock, cardboard 1mm thick, masking tape, balsa wood and PVA glue. So it's a pretty standard list of items that we need. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the one that I made earlier. I've always wanted to say that. And here's one I made earlier. There we are. So you can see there that on top here we have the actual beacon, and this is the damage. It got knocked off, so I'm going to have to glue that back on, but it's fine, it's repairable. And what I did was I put this going on a slope going up with cliffs on one edge, which is also damaged, so I'll also be repairing that, and with just a black painted cardboard back, which is not how I make my terrain anymore. Obviously this only is going to work up against something, which isn't really very flexible, so we'll do something a bit more advanced. But you can see this is an early example of bark textured rock face that I did, which I'm pretty pleased about as it happens. It does work very, very well, and just needs to be glued back in again with some gator glue and it'll be done. So yeah, that's one I made earlier. We're now going to make a brand new one. So put that to one side and we will compare and contrast and see how much I've learned in the last 2 years. So I'm going to gather my materials together and make a start, and I'll invite you along as soon as I'm ready. Right then, let's get stuck in. I'm looking forward to this. It's quite nice going back to a build. So first of all, step 1. The easiest way to make a box is to find a ready-made one, obviously. However, for a small box like this, you may not be able to find the right size. Now, I do have lots and lots of boxes, but I don't care because I want to make it, so we are going to make it. In this instance, we can make our own out of thick packing card. I have just taken a couple of tabs off of another box, which I had. I think it actually had Sarissa stuff in it, I'm not sure. For the basic shape, you need to mark out 4 equal-sized squares on your card. We marked out our squares to be 5 centimeters 2 inches by 5 centimeters 2 inches. Cut out the squares with a craft knife and steel rule. Now, you'll remember, if you watch my channel, I have these safety rulers, which are absolutely superb, and I mention in my what tools can I not live without, and that definitely is one of them. And I would highly recommend that you get yourself a safety ruler for if you're going to be using a sharp knife to cut out shapes. It's a far safer thing. Anyway, using a thin line of PVA glue on each section, glue the squares together to make a box shape with no top or bottom. So leave this to dry before moving on. So we're going to do that now. So I'm going to mark out my shapes here. Now I have a 90-degree angle there, which is the most important thing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to mark along the bottom 5 centimeters or 2 inches, which is actually pretty much the case. And 10 and 15. I'm not going to quite get my full 4 sides out of this, but nearly. So we'll do that. 5, 5, draw a line along. There we are, and then mark each section. And then what I will do is I will cut this out with my sharp knife. I think my Stanley knife needs to be refreshed. If you've never seen this happen before, this is how you do it. What you do is you get some strong pliers, you bring it back to the section that you want to snap it at, and you snap it, and you bin that, and then you have a nice fresh blade. So let's see if that's better. There we are. Yes, that was obviously getting very blunt indeed. Okay, so I will cut out a 4th one of these, and I'll be back when that is done to show you the gluing. You can see that I have my 4 walls, and you can also see that I have my Lego out, and I do love playing with Lego. I think everyone does. Best thing about being a dad is at some point I'll be able to buy her Lego, and I will. But what I'm doing here in this case is using it as a form just to help me do this and support this so that it doesn't become a real pain in the backside. So a couple of things to say is Lego is a good thing. The second thing to say is make these in 2 halves. Don't try and do too much at once. Don't try and be too clever, which is often my fault, that I try to be too clever and then it all falls on this backside. If you do these in 2 sections, then they will be dry and able to be put together without you cursing and swearing or what have you. So a little bit of, there we are, a little bit of Lego and a little bit more patience than the instructions request, and you'll find you get a better result. So actually I'm going to rotate that one like that because I have a wider contact point on that end. And what I've done is I've picked out these bits of cardboard and I'm making it so that they have the best contact point both end to end, as you just saw, but also going down onto the bottom, so you can see that that has nice wide base, which should make it a little more stable. So there we are. So I will now leave those to dry, which will take a couple of hours. Doesn't take that long for it to go off lightly, but I want this to be really set. And then when that's done, I'll come back and I'll put the 2 together, and then we will have our base. So I will be back with another clip when I'm ready to shoot another clip. Okay, so I have glued the 4 sides together, as you can see, and I'm now ready to move on to the next step. As you can also see, I have fixed my first version, which is really nice to have done. So that can go back in the shelf and go back onto rotation, and we'll see how good this version is. So this is now still on step 1 as it happens, and we're talking about doing the roof of the box. So the lid of the box will need to be slightly larger than the other squares so it fits snugly over the top of them. The easiest way to work out how much bigger it needs to be is to draw around the box shape onto some more packing card and then cut out this square and then glue it on. Now that makes all the sense in the world, doesn't it? So that's what I'm going to do here. I have some more card, I have a pencil, and I'm going to draw around it, as you see, and I'm going to cut that shape out using my knife, which is somewhere, it's over here, not to hand, and my safety ruler, which is always to hand, just up here on the shelf. So let's cut this out. And that will now sit nicely on top. Okay, so we'll get some PVA. A little bit more actually. Turn it over. There, you see, I've not made it perfectly square. Anyway, that's fine. So we'll glue that on now. So I'll get my PVA and I'll run my bead of PVA all across the top. You can see because my camera's in the wrong place for this angle, but anyway, you've all seen people using PVA before. Let's just glue it in place, like so. Take the smears off, Use that to seal it off the edges. And there we are. So we'll put that to one side, and then we're going to go on to step 2, which is the steps. That will dry over there. So the steps. To make your steps, cut out some strips of packing card measuring about 1 inch, 25mm wide, and glue them one on top of the other in rough step shapes, getting slightly smaller the higher up you go. Be sure to leave a square at the top of your steps, roughly 25mm, an inch by an inch, so that there is room enough for your model to be stood on them, which also makes some sense. Don't worry if the steps do not reach the top of the box. As long as the model can see over the top, it can still light the beacon. As an approximate guide, the bottom step should be roughly as long as the side of the box, and then fill in the holes in the packing card with masking tape as you did with the walls. So I'm going to do the masking tape on the walls a little later on, once that lid has dried, which hopefully won't take too long. Should be, it dries quite quickly, PVA, as you know. So what we're going to do now is we're going to roughly mark out our steps. And wouldn't you know, I have a 3cm wide bit here, and it's a bit long, so we'll trim that down to about 5cm. Like so. And then what we'll do is we will build this up so that it is about 5cm high, or just under. So we'll take that down to be about yay. There we are. And then, yep, cut that straight. You can see this isn't a very scientific method, and it definitely isn't going to reach the top at that rate. I'm going to need to do another one in between those two lengths, I think. So let's get some more card cut. That's actually not very thick card. Let's not do that one at all. Let's go with this card, which will have a slightly higher. So that's 5cm. And that can be 4.5cm. There we are, that'll be a bit better. And then we'll cut another one. Use my ruler this time, which I should have used the first time. Make it a lot easier. And that can be 4. And that can be 3. There we are. That will be perfect. So let's glue that together, and then put that to one side, and then I'll do the tape a bit later on when everything is dry. So a bit of PVA on that. Bit of PVA on that one. And a bit of PVA on this one. Already have some on my finger, that's good. So we'll leave that to go off to dry, and I'll be back a bit later with the next steps. I've just offered up my steps onto the box, and I've realised that it is definitely not going to be tall enough. So what I'm going to do is something a little bit different. I've just done a little bit of measuring, and I'm going to actually turn the corner. So this is going to fit around the edges of the box, with which of the box, and then I'll have steps going down from there. So, and that will be the dimensions that will need to be to get to on the floor. So I'm going to make some more cuts, do some more gluing, and make sure that I get that right, and I will show you what it looks like when it is done. But I thought I would just show you that I've had to be a little bit flexible so that I can actually reach the height that I want to. So my box has been left all afternoon and is now dry. So what I'm now going to do is cut some lengths of masking tape and stick them down the edges. So I will do that by measuring up and cutting, like so. Good catch that, wasn't it? And I will do that for all the corners and all the way around the edges there, and I will also line the sides of the stairs. So I'll get that done now. Once I've done that, I will be gluing these steps to the side, and I will not do that on camera because it'll just be a bit of PVA, and stick it on and leave it. So I'll be back with the next step very shortly for you, and probably tomorrow for me now. It's the morning after, so I didn't get this finished completely last night because I actually wasn't feeling very well, which is a bit scary at these times, but I'm feeling better now. So yeah, just working too hard. And what I was doing something, and I was just doing it without thinking, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to invite you guys along to watch, because it is a cool little technique, and it may not have occurred to people, and it has, and I'm teaching people to suck eggs, but whatever, I just wanted to share. So I'm working on the steps, and I'm wanting to fill the gaps in with the masking tape. So what I do is I cut my length out to roughly the right length. So I'll do that first, like that. Hopefully that is the right length and I've not undercut it. And then I will stick it on, and I'll make sure it's fully firm there. And then using the back of my knife, I come along and I press that in to get the step, so I don't lose the step definition. You try and do this with your fingers, and you will not be able to get that strong definition. So it's just a very quick little tip that I thought might help you to get that lovely sharp definition on the steps, but still be able to fill in the gap with your masking tape, and also make the masking tape stick down a bit better. So there we are. I'm going to continue with this now, get the rest of it done, and as I said, going to get that stuck on there, and then I'll be back again later with another step once that's glued together. I'll come back together with the next step. We're on to the next step now. That is now nice and dry and all stuck together, and you can see it's a really interesting shape with it going around the corner. So the next step is step 3, which is the base. The size of your base depends on how large your beacon is. Draw a rough shape around it, adding approximately 1 centimetre or ½ an inch all the way around. The base is made in the usual way. Cut out your piece of card to the required size, and then round off the corners to prevent undue wear and tear. Stick the assembled beacon onto the base with PVA glue and leave it to dry before moving on to the texturing stage. So let's get that done now. So I will roughly draw around this, as has been established. It doesn't have to be too accurate, so there we are. We have a shape here, and I have my scissors, and I will cut out with scissors on this one because it doesn't have to be too accurate either. And this is where you can see what I was meaning about why scissors aren't always good for this, because you have to kind of bend it to be able to get the handles in and do the actual cutting. Now in this case it doesn't matter, because I can bend the bit that I don't want, but it does mean that that now is no longer really going to be of any use to anyone. It's a bit of a shame, a bit of a waste, but I have quite a lot of cardboard at the moment. So we'll round off the edges, and round off the edge, and round off the corner. There we are, and we'll stick that down on there. So I will get a little cooling rack so that I can move it around, and then I will put some glue, super glue, it's not super glue. I will put some PVA, and I'm going to stick that down like that, and we'll let that to dry. Now what you'll notice is that I've actually got an open area at the back, which is going to be a little bit interesting for me to model. However, the idea is I'm actually going to stack some wood in there so that it looks like that's their spare or their supply of dry wood. So I'll be sticking some bits of wood into that little area there. Just a little addition to the fun and to the story of the build. So there we are. I'll be back again with the next step tomorrow morning, I think, when that has dried. So this is now dried onto its base. So now we're going to do texture and detail, which is step number 4. Using small rectangles of thin card, add the impression of brickwork to the sides of your box and steps. Once you are happy with the result, paint some ready mixed filler over the walls and steps as you did in pack 6 and 7. Don't paint the filler on too thickly or you'll obscure the detail of the brickwork you just stuck on. Now, I have this box here, which has inside of it bricks that I cut out for the wall build a couple of builds back. So there we are. So I have them pre-made. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some PVA, and I'm going to paint that PVA on the walls and on the stairs and everything around the sides, and then I'm going to randomly stick on the bricks in the same way as I did when I was doing the walls before. So we have the plate, and we have the PVA glue, and we have a brush, which I'm just going to quickly dip in some water to moisten the ends slightly. Always a good idea. There we are. And I'll do a little bit of this on camera and do most of it off camera because it is going to be a little bit samey. But what we'll do is we'll put some PVA in, and I'll use this as well to kind of like hold down the slightly badly stuck masking tape. Though that will obviously also get held down by the filler. And now that we've got some PVA all over the side, I can position these bricks how I wish, like so. And remember that bricks overlap. They are staggered as so. So there we are. That looks quite nice. And we'll put another couple down here. Oh, drop that on the floor, never mind. Okay, so that is kind of the effect that we're going to go for. Like that. I will now go and do that, as I say, on all the other sides and also on these sides here. And I'll be back when that is all dry to do the plaster stage. Couple of hours later, and that's dried. So now we're going to go on to texture and detail. Well, the second half of texture and detail. So I've done the small rectangles of thin card. Once I'm happy with the result, paint some ready mixed filler over the walls and steps, as you did in pack 6 and 7. Don't paint the filler on too thickly or you'll obscure the detail of the brickwork you've just stuck on, which makes sense. Now, I have this pre-mix here, which is actually going off a bit, which is a bit of a shame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get some of this out onto my plate, and I will get little bits out and then get more out as I need it. I've got a brush and I have some water, and I have no idea how this is going to work because I didn't actually do this in the earlier terrain builds. So I'm going to put some water on here and mix it up and see whether this is going to actually be paintable onable with this stuff, because I normally apply this with a palette knife. So let's see. This is a public service. It's going off anyway. Let's see. Not sure that I would bother doing this again, but I'm going to stick with it just to see what happens, because I've done that before. Thought I'm not going to bother with that, that's rubbish. Well, then after a while, and when you look at it afterwards, the clever people that wrote this magazine know what they're talking about. So I will pop some music on, and you can enjoy me doing this, watching this, or skip ahead if you wish. I'm going to let that to dry. That was much more successful than I expected it to be, but as I say, that is pretty common. So yeah, I will be back with the next step very shortly. I'm actually going a little bit out of sequence now, because technically the next step is step 5, which is the signal fire, but I'm going to do that after I've done the painting, because, well, I want to, and I'm not ready to make it, and I do want to do something on this now. So painting the models. To paint the walls and steps, first add a small amount of white paint to black to make grey. Now I would do that, but I already have a good colour of grey that I like to use, so this is in this pot because I broke the paint pot, and I'm going to paint that all over the whole model. So very, very simply, I've got my brush, which is just a cheap brush from a supermarket as it happens, and we're going to paint over the entire thing. And I'm going to paint over even the brick colours that I did, the brick shapes that I did and everything. I'm just going to paint the entire model. So I'll pop some music on and we'll get that done. There we are, that's done. So I'll let that to dry, and then I'll be back later with the next step, which is a lighter grey dry brush. The next step on this is to do some more painting, because I'm not going to do, as I said, I'm not going to do the signal fire until after I've done this. So the brickwork can be painted a lighter grey to begin with and dry brushed even lighter. So what I'm going to do is take the lighter paint and I'm going to paint the bricks, and I might use a different paintbrush for that because that one I got for the dry brushing. So get myself a different colour, different brush there, and paint the bricks with this lighter grey. Just pick them out like that. And like I say, these are just shop bought grey. But it's very easy if you don't have greys to make this. As long as you've got black and white, it's very easy obviously to make greys. So I'm going to go across, I'm going to paint each of these bricks in this grey, and then what I'll do as well, and I will demonstrate this now, is I will also dry brush this same grey across all of the model. So once I've done these little bits of brick, there's one there. There we are. What I'll do is I'll get my more dry brush one, take most of the grey off, and then paint it over. Very, very lightly dry brush it, just to bring out that texture that we put on with the filler. So there we are. And I might even come back and dry brush this again with even lighter, but this is going to be a good first coat. I remember the first time I ever did dry brushing, it blew my mind just what a difference it made, and it still blows my mind just what a difference it makes when you do it right. Don't have very much paint on your brush, put it on your paper. You can always go back to your paper. And what we'll do is we'll build this up over several colours, different lightnesses. Like that. So I'll get that done, and I'll be back later when all this is done and I'm ready for the next process. With the official Watchtower going quite well, I'm getting close to being completed actually, I'm going to make a start now on the more advanced one. And what you see in front of you is a sheet of MDF, a yogurt pot, and a flickering light. Now you probably can't see that. It's not on anyway. This one's not that great. I have a few, fortunately. This one doesn't seem to like to stay on. There we are. It's a flickering light which I bought ages ago for another project and never used because it was just too bulky. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make use of these materials and a few other bits and pieces like the modelling compound from Luke's APS and maybe some air drying clay to stick that onto the base there and build up a little bit of terrain. This is going to be removable and this is going to be glued through the bottom. So you couldn't see that, through the bottom there, so that the little LED thing, the little light bulb thing is coming through there. And then I'll put over the top of that, I'll put the Watchtower and it will be able to be turned on and off and look quite nice. And I'll do it so that this, or I'll try and do it so that this can at least be removed. But the good thing with this one, one of the reasons why I liked it and I bought these, is that they do actually have batteries that could be changed. So long as the bulb doesn't burn out, we can keep changing the batteries and it will last a good long time, hopefully. So that's the plan. So what I'm going to do now is gather some more materials together that I need and start to work out the order in which to do things. My consideration at the moment is that I might look to stick this base down first and sculpt a mould around it. I think I'm not going to put steps up. I'm going to build a ladder. I'm going to make a ladder that you'll have to climb up to, because that also, if you're watching the films, that's also how they do it. They don't just do it with big blocks and monolithic builds. This is going to look like a pile of stones or a very simple mound which will have the fire on top. So yeah, let's see how this goes. As is my habit, I've changed my mind very, very quickly. So rather than using the big yogurt pot, I've gone for a smaller, which I've just emptied, polyfiller pot, which is slightly lower. And this is going to make it a little bit more natural. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this on to the board first, and then I'm going to get some polystyrene. I'm going to make steps out of polystyrene going up to it. And then I'm going to build up the bank around it, which will be done with the Luke's APS modelling compound. And I will also put that modelling compound on the top, so it's a mound with a circle in the middle, which is where the fire will go. And then that can sit underneath. As I've said, this will still be removable, but it'll be lower. The problem with that was very high. I would have needed to make the ladder. And as I thought about it and looked at it and thought about it and looked at it, I realised I didn't actually like that idea at all. So change your mind. So I'm going to crack on with this. I will now look at sticking this down. What I'm going to do is use gator glue, which is very, very good indeed at this sort of thing, sticking two unlike items together. So we will get our gator glue out, and we will stick it on around, and I will then just weight it down, and I will have to leave it for an hour or two, but not that long, for it to go. So we will do the little knock to pick out of there, because I will possibly be doing a cliff, and we will put that there. Don't forget to put the lid on, which I keep doing, and then I will grab a weight and I'll put that weight inside there, wherever my weights are, and that will then be dry. So I'll be back when I'm cutting the polystyrene. So that is now weighted down and is going to start drying. So what I've got is a scrapped piece of polystyrene, and I'm going to start carving this out or cutting this out into steps. Now, I don't need to be too worried about gaps at the back, because I'm going to be filling this all with the modelling compound, so it'll be fine. But what I do need to do is find out how far away the edge is, which is about there. And then what I will do is I'll grab my safety ruler, which is just on the shelf here, and I'll grab my Stanley knife, which is just in storage here. As you can see, over time I have managed to develop my hobby area so that most things normally are relatively within reach and I don't have to go looking for them. I think that kind of laziness, taking your time to plan your area, is a really good thing to do. So I don't need to trim the top off all of this, because a lot of this is going to be underneath more steps, as you can see. So we'll have another step going here and maybe one more above it. So let's carve that in here. So we will mark that about yay, and then cut that out. So there. And then we will get the last bit. Go about there. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to glue these together separately, not to the base just yet. Once I've carved the tops that I need to, I can also then carve it down to make it just a little smoother, because that's quite big and robust. I do want them that wide, but I'd maybe like to shave the edges off so that they're a little less stark. So what we'll do first of all is we will mark on there and on there where our edges are going to go to. There we are. Now, very carefully, we will shave the top off this top step. So that we don't have that texture. That's that. Then, again, very carefully, I will draw my knife along here. Doing something you should never do, which is cutting towards me, but I'm doing it very carefully. And you can see that that peels off nice and easily when you do that. It's just a case of taking it easy, not trying to rush it, not trying to force it. If there's resistance, it is futile, but don't try and force it too hard. So there we are, just cut along that. Be very careful when you're pulling towards you. If you are pulling towards you, you need to be doubly cautious that you're not pulling too hard against any resistance. So there we are. This will obviously all get covered up with the modelling compound. There we are. Right, so now we have that. What I will do is I will get more gator glue, and I will also get my cocktail sticks, and I will stick these together. So let's grab the gator glue down. Oh, knocked something over. I might actually not cocktail stick it, but I will, you guessed it, I will clamp it. So, got a good generous amount of gator glue on the bottom, but not too much. Stick that to that and that to that. Lid on and back in its place. And then I really do have everything to hand. It's very nice. Very lucky having this space. And then what we'll do is we will clamp that to that. And then clamp that to that. And then do the other side. And with that done, I'm going to leave this now to dry before I start the next step of this build. So yeah, I'm glad that I went for the shallower option. I think it's going to look a lot better on the tabletop as well, and it's certainly going to be more useful for miniatures than having to climb up onto that huge thing. So there we are. I'll be back when there is something else to add to this project. So this is dry, as you can see, stuck on, very good, and this is stuck together as well. So what I'm going to do now is start working on the build-up of the terrain around the outside, and to do that, first of all I'm going to just shave down the corners of this and make it so that it's a little bit less of a kind of block, and that will also give me some of the contours I'm going to work towards. And then I'm going to take some blocks of polystyrene XPS, and I'm going to shape them and stick them on around as well, so that then all I have to do is cover with the Luke's modelling compound rather than build huge volumes of it up, which will then take ages to dry. So not sure how much of this will actually be kept on camera, but I'll put some music on and I'll start carving and we'll see where we get to. Okay, so as you can see, that's got a nice effect on it now. The white, the light grey and the dark grey are giving a really nice contrast. I might do another white dry brush over that, but for now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some black on the top as it suggests to make it look a little bit kind of like charcoal before we start working on the actual wood pile. So I don't want to put too much, I just want it to stain, and I'm going to put a little bit more just as kind of stuff, just to look like dirt and streaks that come down from the top. So there we are. A bit more on top maybe. Yeah. Good. So that is how you do your painting. Let's quickly go over to the book. Get my big pot of white, which I don't want anymore, and read the firewood. So the signal fire. The signal fire is made of strips of balsa wood. Now I don't use balsa wood, so it won't be made of strips of balsa wood. I'm going to use actual sticks. You could just as easily use a different thickness or a mixture of types of balsa wood. You could even achieve a similar effect with wooden lollipop sticks or twigs. I'm going to be using twigs. We use wood from different sources to make our beacon look like a hastily prepared bonfire. Break up the balsa wood sheets. Okay, we're not doing balsa wood, but score them with a pen or pencil along the grain and then gently snap them along the score. It is far easier to snap the wood along the grain rather than against it. Using a craft knife, cut the long strips into smaller pieces. Irregular lengths will also add to the effect. You'll find it easier if you paint the pieces brown before sticking them on, otherwise you'll be left with lots of hard to reach areas to paint. So what we're going to do is I have earlier gathered a whole bunch of sticks. As you know, we have a wood burning stove here, or in every room, so we have lots and lots of twigs and sticks that we collect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start breaking these up and piling them up to glue onto the top of this. The other thing I'm going to do is gather some of these together, and they're going to be tucked away inside this little area here. So that's going to be our stash of unburnt or unstacked wood should they need to make the fire up again or replenish it. So just breaking that up. I've got some bigger bits as well. I'll pop some music on and get on with this. There we are, we've got a nice pile of wood. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to build this up as best as I can just using PVA glue. And this could take some time, so I may not run the camera if this gets fiddly, because it might be quite difficult. But the idea will be to kind of pile it up in a tripod fashion, like so. So you've got like so. Now I'm not sure how realistic that will look, so I'm going to have a bit of a play around. I'm also going to be stashing some wood inside under here, and that will just be a case of putting some PVA and letting it dry and just piling them in, and then there'll just be a nice pile of wood in there that'll be ready for future use to make another bonfire. So I will get that done and I'll be back to show you what it looks like when it's complete. As I've been working on this, I had a sudden epiphany based on the film. If you remember in the film, the fire, which it's Pippin, isn't it, that climbs up to and lights, is arranged in a crossways fashion, like so. And that is far easier to build. So there we are. That is going to be a much easier way of making it with your signal fire if you are building along, is build it like they do in the tower, because they've probably done that for a good reason, made it like that. Probably because they also struggled to make it into a pyramid shape that would stay up, because there's not very many fires you find that actually are pyramid shaped. But anyway, so I'm going to carry on with that, making a kind of pyramid but out of squares, using copious amounts of PVA as per usual, and I think this will look really, really good. You can also see in there that there's some wood piled up. That's drying, and I will probably put some more in there, but it needs to dry first, otherwise it will all fall down. This is another time when patience is a virtue. If you have patience, you'll find this is more successful. So this may take 2 or 3 sessions of stacking, but suffice to say, when it's done, I will definitely invite you along to see what it looks like when it's completed, because this is pretty much getting towards the end of build. I'm very excited. So the next steps on this build is twofold. First of all, I'm going to take the light and I'm going to drill a hole and I'm going to mount it to the lid. So I have a pin vise here, and I'm going to do that in the centre of the lid, like so. There we are. And then I'm going to get a file and enlarge said hole. This is, funnily enough, how I also cope with the fact that sometimes you need to drill holes for pins for horses or whatever, or to put them into slaughter bases, not slaughter bases, non-slaughter, in the horse bases. So yeah, we will do that, and I will enlarge that so that it is big enough. Doesn't need to be dead centre, fortunately, and it doesn't actually need to be all that accurate, fortunately, because that is neither dead centre nor accurate. However, that is definitely good enough for me. So I will glue that in place using probably super glue, because it will just go off straight away. The next thing that I'm going to be doing this evening is I'm going to be using the Luke's APS modelling compound to fill in the area around this, and I'm also going to be sticking some cliff edges on the bottom around here. So I will gather that together and I will be back very shortly to show you that process. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone away and I've found myself some bark, and I found some that actually was already near enough the correct diameter, which is pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick that in place using, you guessed it, gator glue, clamp it and leave it to dry, and then after that I will come along and I'll put the modelling compound on. So I'm going to get that done now. So the idea will be that we'll get our gator glue, which is a bit squiffy, and we will, and I'm going to be very careful here because I want to be able to take that lid off, if you think about it. So I'm going to put gator glue here, and that wasn't being very careful. Like that, and then we're going to put gator glue at the bottom where it's going to stick on. Bearing in mind I will be covering all of this with modelling compound anyway, and then when that's in place, what I'll do, oh, I've put the gator glue down in the way, I do apologise, I'm juggling a little bit here. So we've got gator glue at the top, we've got gator glue at the bottom, then we're going to get one of my clamps and we'll clamp it in place, like so. Too tight. Don't want it to be that tight, I just want it to be held in there. Perfect. Okay, so now we'll do the next bit, which is going to go there. So once more, I will run gator glue along that rim. And this time I will actually put it on the bottom of this bark. And we'll pop that in there to where we want it to be, and we'll get ourselves a clamp and we'll hold it in place with the clamp. And I will do that all the way around and then leave it to dry for a couple of hours, and then I'll come back and I'll invite you back for the next steps. That is all dried very well, and I'm very, very pleased with how that's looking. The next step is twofold. First of all, I'm going to trim off some of these little bits you can see here where the glue has expanded a bit far. I don't mind where it's expanded, where it's not too far. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my knife, my trusty knife. I'm going to use a Stanley knife so much more than the hobby knife. And I'm just going to trim it off. Okay, that's enough. Don't need to trim anything else, I don't think. With that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this downstairs now and I'm going to spray it with black primer, which is just shop-bought car primer that I have from the local hardware store. Wasn't it funny when you just used to be able to go out to the local hardware store? Anyway, so I'm going to spray this whole thing. I'm not going to bother spraying the top because that dark blue will already be okay when I put the cover over it, but I am going to spray all of this, aiming particularly to get into these little gaps here and these little gaps here, where if I don't do a very good job with the filler, there's a potential that some of the white might show through. So I'm going to go and do that, and then I will be back later to show you the next step, which will be putting on the compound, which is what I need to get done today to finish this. So yeah, cracking on. Not very long later, as that primer does dry fast, and that black thing that isn't showing up very well on camera, but that black thing is now ready for me to do the next stage. Now you will notice that I did spray, and I used an aerosol over the top of some blue foam. Now the thing to remember about blue foam is that you do need to be very careful about the propellant that is inside of spray cans. However, the paint is perfectly fine for blue foam and other foams, so long as you're keeping the spray can a long way back, you're okay to spray towards foam, and that's all I did. I just kept it back, and it's actually given it a nice little covering as well. Not that it was important, it was this that I was looking at painting over mostly. So what we're going to do is we're going to make use of some of Luke's APS's modelling compound, which I've got in this big pot here. Let's open that. There we are. And I've got some water here, and so I'm going to put that all around this model and fill in the gaps, and I'm also going to put some around the top of the base here, top of the lid here, because that will then sit on there. It's not great, it's a little bit close there, but it does fit, and I'll paint that all black and it will look fine. So here is my little trays, and I'm going to remind myself it says 3 parts compound to 1 part water. But I do this by sight, so I'm not going to do this all on camera, but just in case any of you haven't watched my video that I made about how to use this stuff, I'll just do one mix and one application, and then I'll turn the camera off. So you need to put less water in than you think. I find that 3 parts to 1 is actually just a little bit too watery for me, but really what you're looking at doing is playing around with it yourself. Don't be scared, just chuck a little bit of water in, as you saw, a little bit. You can always add more water if you want to. And then mix it, and mix it, and mix it, and mix it until you get the consistency that you're looking for. So I'll do that now. There you are. As you can see, I put very, very little water in that, and that now is a good consistency. When you press it, some water does squeeze out a little bit, so it is moist enough to move, but it's not swimming, it's not liquid, and that's how I like to use it. So what you then do is as simple as this. You squidge it on where you want it. Oh my goodness, this is there. You just squidge it on where you want it, and don't worry too much at this stage about making sure that it's smooth, because this is why I only make small quantities. It will become to a state where it's smoothable. Now I'm just going to quickly grab something to set it on. Okay, I'm back. I just like to have it actually not sat directly on my bench, so that I have a little more control on the edges. As I was saying, don't worry too much about making it really smooth at this stage. One of the reasons why I make small batches is because I then get some working time at the end of the batch to smooth over what I've applied, and that's the time to make it actually conform 100% to the contours that you're looking for. So at this stage, what you're looking at doing is basically putting it roughly where you want it, but not worrying too much about smoothing out all of the areas. There we are. So we've put all of the compound all the mix that I made, and it's now applied all over the model. So now what I do is I go through and with a wet finger I smooth it down and work it to the contours I'm looking for. So on this side I'm looking for something a little like that, so it's a mound that goes into a cliff face, and over here I'm just looking at filling in the gaps, so that might even get to push a little bit further along because I don't actually want it that high. And as you can see, it is very easy to work with. You're not having to struggle to do this. It's a very easy medium. Luke's done a great job creating this. It's one of his best products, I think, personally. There we are. So you just go along and make sure that you've got it in the correct contours. The other thing to say is it does stick to itself well. So if you decide that you want to change this, then you can come along and put some more on. But I'm pretty happy with that little kind of contour I'm getting there. Filling in the gap there. Good. So that's that. So what I'll do now is I will wash my hands. I wash my hands between each mix and dry them thoroughly so that I'm always keeping clean, because it is a messy process, as you can see. So yeah, I'm going to carry on with this and I will show you what it looks like when I have done all of the fillering. So that's done. As you can see, I have not done any filling on top of this, but I have done all around the outside, and I've also done the top of the lid, which I hope is going to work. My concern there is that this stuff doesn't always necessarily stick very well to plastic, so we shall find out how well that is. I'm going to let that to go off now, and I'll be back later to show you the next step, which will be, I'll actually probably spray it again, I think. So I'll spray it black again, and then I'll come back after that with the next step. It's a bit later on in the day, and that compound is now dry. So what I am going to do now is get the black paint, and I'm going to paint black over the whole of all of the models. I'm not doing a spray paint on this one. I'm going to do this black paint that I use rather than the spray paint, and I'm going to paint that over everything. So it's going to be, let's give that a stir. There we are. And I'm going to then let that to dry, because the next thing to do after this will be flocking and texturing and then flocking, and then we'll be done, and I'll be able to do texturing and flocking of the actual official build as well. So I will get that done. Later on in these videos, I am absolutely sure that I'm going to need to start building before the week, or the 2 weeks before I started this, the week before I need to publish. Just sat for a week and did nothing, which was a bit stupid of me, really. But there's bigger and bigger builds as you get further and further into these videos, into these magazines. Right, so that's that done very quickly. And yeah, so you're going to have to start. You're going to have to start being a little bit more organised. I'm making a right mess here. Never mind. So yeah, slap that black paint over it. And obviously I will be then, like I say, doing my usual texturing using my terrain paint and sand texture over this, and I'll be painting the rocks. So yeah, hopefully this will all dry and I can even make a start on that tonight. There we are, that's done. What I should add is after the previous clip when I was doing the modelling terrain, I did a modelling compound, so I did realise I'd missed this bit here. So I went back in, same technique, and filled it in. I'm sure you're all shouting at your screens going, but you missed a bit. I did spot it, I did fix it, I didn't bother turning the camera back on because it was exactly the same technique as I'd already done. But yeah, these things happen. Right, I'll let that to dry and hopefully I'll be back either later today or tomorrow to do the rest of the texturing and flocking and build a fire over the top of that, which I also need to do. We are reaching the end of this build. What I'm going to do now is my sand and paint mix thing for texture. After which I will then apply what flocks I'm going to apply. So if any of you ever watched any of my videos before, you'll know what this happens. And this is where I do diverge on every one of these Battle Games in Middle-earth builds, because I just don't like painting things green. It isn't realistic, and it won't fit in with the rest of my terrain. So what I do is I paint my terrain paint mix, and I'll link to my video how to make that, but briefly and simply it's PVA, water, and normal house paint that's been mixed together well, and with a little bit of washing up liquid added just to stop it from going off and to act as a flow agent. So I'll paint some of that on, and then I get my sifted sand, which is just normal builder's sand. I don't buy this, I have this for my renovation. And what I then do is I then scatter it liberally over the top, and I do that in sections like so. So I'll do that section, turn it round, do the opposite corner, and then it'll be ready to be knocked off the first section. It's as quick as that. It's a really quick and simple technique that gives you a nice base. The paint I use to make my terrain paint, this terrain paint which I use on most of my bases, not all of them, but most of my terrain, is called chocolate. So there we are. So yeah, we put a little bit more on here, like so, and then put some sand on it. And it is as simple as that. And the other side will now be dry enough for me to tip off. However, what I'll do is I'll carry on onto the next one, which is the roof, the lid of my more advanced build, or my different technique build, not really that much more advanced. So yeah, I'm going to get this done. I'll turn the camera off and I'll be back when this is completed for the flocking stage. Yay! It's getting really close to completed, which is good. We're entering the home stretch with these now. You can see that I'm set up for flocking. So I have my homemade flocks around the back. There will be a link in the video description to show you how I go about making those. I have my terrain paint. There will also be a description for that. A link for that in the description. So what I'm going to do, I have a couple of things I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to flock the bases of both of these complete, and then they'll be done. I do have yet to do the stone colour on that, so I might leave flocking around the bases of these and then do the paint on that a little bit later on. But on top here, I'm going to be thinking about how my layout is going to be. Because if you remember, we have our flickering light, look at that. And so I need to build a bit of a fire pyre around it, and maybe do some black and what have you, and I have some other scatters that I might be able to use up here. So I might just put that to one side for now and not do any flocking on that. So let's get started on this. I won't do all of this on camera because I've done it lots of times, and if you want to see how I do it, I do also have a video specifically for that, so I'll zoom in on the one that I'm going to do. But it is as simple as get your terrain paint, which is PVA, water with a little bit of dishwasher or washing up liquid or whatever you want to call it. Paint that on relatively liberally over your area, and it is very, very similar to how we do the terrain paint, to the brown and the sand. So we do that. And what I normally do is I normally go for a pinch of the darker flock first as a base. Then you want to think about how you want this to look. So think about what colours you might want on your base and how sparse you want it. Because we've done the underneath with brown and texture, you could just leave it. You could just paint the terrain paint over the top as a ceiling layer and not bother putting very much or any flock on it. And that is also a good solution. Okay, and then I'll pick a lighter colour and come in and just pick out a few areas where I want it to maybe be a little bit lighter, maybe towards the base, maybe tip it back a bit so I can get in a little bit better at the base. And then finally I tie it all together with one more scatter of the dark. There we are. And I will do that over the whole of the model. So I'll come back when I've finished and show you what that looks like, and I'll also do the same on this one as well, with maybe a little bit of a twist, which I'll show you. So the little wrinkle that I mentioned about I'm going to do is on this path. So I'm going to be putting some of my terrain glue over there here, and then what I've got is my dirt that I picked up off the back bank, and I'm going to very, very lightly with a spoon just drop some of it over here. I'm not aiming on covering the whole area with this. I just want to give the impression of some gravel that may have been laid down deliberately. It is a different type of material to the surrounding dirt, and it will just give the impression of a prepared track, and that's what I'm looking for. There we are. That should be sufficient. A very, very tiny amount. So that was that. So I will now carry on with this. I think I might leave that to dry and come back later on and do the stones and then finish off the flocking. But at the back here drying is the completed official version, which I think is looking really, really good. Anyway, onwards. Probably should have done this before I started flocking, frankly. But what I'm about to do now is work on the stone on the rock face. And I'm going to do that in the way that I've done before, so I won't show all of this on camera. I'll just show little sections and jump between them. But first of all, we're going to get some of our darker grey, and it's not going to be as much of a dry brush because I'm going to leave quite a lot of paint still on my brush. It's going to be quite a heavy overbrush, and it will bring out a lot of the texture, but it's not designed to just do that. It's designed to actually give a lot of colour to the rock, and this is the basic undercolour to all of the rock that is for this outcropping that we are working on. And I generally do this. This is the colour I generally go with. I don't normally do anything too outlandish, but if you go out and look outside around you, you'll find that rocks are all sorts of colours, particularly rock faces, and so we will be adding a lot more colours to this than just greys and whites. So I'll do that over the whole body of this, and I'll be back when I'm ready to apply the next colour. That didn't take me very long at all. So what we're going to do now is I have all these colours, and you can see that there's some crazy ones. There's like a really dark purple, there's a bright orange, there's a nice rich red, there's green, not that one, there's like a mustardy colour, or deep red, and a green there. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting these on as patches over the rocks, and I'm going to do that before I do any more dry brushing. So the way that I work with these is I use the lids, because dipping right into there is going to be quite difficult. You could potentially knock it over. As it is, I can pop that out of the way now, and I've got plenty there accessible to me in the lid. And I'll just get some on my paintbrush, not very much, and I'll just dab it on. And I don't want to overwhelm it, so quite a lot of colours. So we're just going to pick a few places, not very many, and we're going to just apply it either as streaks or as blobs. So that's the purple. We really didn't need much paint there. Next up, having dried my brush, we're going to go for this lovely, lovely reddy colour. There we are. Just take a little bit of that out, don't need much at all. And that can be kind of dotted in. And you don't want to worry too much at this stage, because we are going to tie this all together. This is just adding that colour which you get on all rocks. is going to be this paint, which is a bit solid, so we're going to take it from inside. It's a shame. I need to add some water to that to make that live again, and we're going to dip that on as well. And you can see that it looks quite stark, but you can trust me when I say this comes out looking awesome. It's already starting to take shape. Right, let's do some bright orange. This we are going to be very sparing with. Just gonna dab it on as a highlight. There we are. And next up, this is one of my favourite colours I own. There we are. As you can see, what's happening is it's becoming almost a hodgepodge, and I'll zoom in at the end when I finish this process. It's becoming almost a combination where there's almost nothing that's not coloured. So all of the greys have been covered up. And again, that's deliberate because we will be applying another stage to this before it's finished. So what I'll do is I will zoom that in for you, so that you can see just how multicoloured that really is. And that's the effect I'm going for. So there we are. Right, I'm going to tidy up here, and I'll be back in a short while to do the final step. The final step for now is for me to take my light grey, which has a bunch of the darker grey in it, which is a bit annoying. I was very careless with using it once. And we're actually going to try and dry brush this over. So I am dabbing my paintbrush, making it so there's almost nothing on it. And what I'll do, and this will now tie it all together, it'll back all those colours off into the background and make them look much more natural, while applying an overall colour. So I will get that done over the entire model, and then after I've done that, I will finish the flocking, and then I'll be back for the next step, which will be building the actual pile and fire and what have you on the top. So I'll get that done, and I will invite you along for this next step, which will be that fire building. We are entering the final stages of this build, which is absolutely fantastic. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually dress this slightly with a few bits and pieces which Rosie picked up off the floor. Now, you know what, if you've got a child, you know that you want to involve your kids in everything you do, and so in this case what I'm going to do is she picked up a couple of stones and a little bit of bark, and so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set those in and glue them down around this one, the official one, because there's more space and it's going to fit in better, and then I'll paint the whole thing with the watered down PVA, and then it's done. So first of all, I'm going to work out roughly where I want each of these things to go. So I reckon that might actually go there, that stone can go there. We have another little stone which I will put in the middle. It's got quite a nice little sheen to it, that. On both sides, good, so I can glue that way, it'll be easier. And then last but not least, I'm going to actually move that, I think, to this side and have that leaning up there. It'll just make it a little bit more interesting to look at, and also I will always remember that Rosie gave me those. So what we have is we have some PVA, and I'm just going to drop a dollop of PVA in each place and sit the stone in it, and that will then dry nicely. So that can go there, a little dollop of PVA on the bottom of the small one, can go there. That there. I'll do that one last. The wood can have a little dollop of PVA on the bottom as well. And that Is it even going to stick? We need to put a little dollop of PVA on the actual base also. Hard to get in. There we are, that'll do. That like that, and then the little bit that just came off can go there. There we are, that looks very nice. And last but not least, this is going to go that way, like so. So we'll put PVA around that edge and on the bottom. And I will now leave this to dry, and then we'll do the watered down PVA to seal the lot, and then it will be complete. So there we are. That's that. A few little bits and pieces from Rosie, and yeah, I'll always remember that was her. So now for this stage on the advanced build. And what I'm going to be doing here is attempting to lay this out in such a way that I will leave gaps so that the light can actually fit through and be seen, because what we don't want to do is spend that time to put a light in there, a bulb in there, and then you can't see the damn thing. So I'm going to be doing this a little bit more carefully than I did with the other one. But I'm going to do it in the same format because, like I say, that is how I see it in the film, and so I think that's how it would be. And I'm going to lay out each layer and then stick it down, and then come back and lay out each other layer and then stick that down, and I'll plan it so that there's always going to be some gap and some light somewhere for that light to come out. So that's going to take me a little while, so I will be back when it is done and show you what it looks like. Wow, what an absolutely epic video that was. Epic or hugely long, I'm not sure which is the correct way to describe it, but we got there, and I'm actually massively pleased with the results of this. So next to me I have my finished articles, and of course, as always, I will put some proper photographs at the end of the video showing these off. But this is the official build, and I think that's come out really nicely. It's not as monolithic as my original one, the first one that I did a couple of years back, but it's probably more useful, and it'll probably get far more gameplay. The second one that I've done, which I'm also very, very pleased about, is here. Now, I have done this so that the top can come off because it's got a light fitting on it. And you can see that it sits on there very, very nicely. It looks okay. I think it's a little bit stark, that brown. I'm not sure what I might do to break that up. But for now, that looks okay to me. And if I just quickly turn the light on, it works really well. I'll get a picture later on of this with the with no lights on, and you'll be able to see much better. But I think you can actually see inside there now that that's flickering away, and it's making a nice little kind of this is about to set on fire thing. So I'm very pleased with that. So there we are. Another Battle Games in Middle-earth magazine done. The Signal Fire build done. It's really nice to have returned to it, like I say, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and maybe you've built along, and if you have, let me know in the comments below. If you've seen anything that's interested you, or got anything that you don't like, you think I could have done better, again, comments below, I'd love to hear from you. If you're not yet a subscriber, please do subscribe, and don't forget to ding the bell, because when you do that, YouTube, I'm not even on eBay, I'm on YouTube. YouTube will tell you maybe when one of these videos goes live, or maybe eBay will, you never know. And last, but by no means least, please stay safe, stay healthy, stay well, and thank you so much for watching Beard Clipper.
Mm-hmm.